Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine war news update, second part thereof for the 31st of March 2025. We're going to start with Sweden. Part of a package of 912 million euros will be directed to order weapons from Swedish manufacturers. 465 million euros will be donated to various coalitions and invested in the Ukraine defense industry. What is going on? Well, this is the largest military aid package to Ukraine since 2022. The Swedish defense minister has announced $1.6 billion of kit going, or of aid going to Ukraine, according to Agence France Presse. So that's really good news. A lot of it stimulating the Swedish economy and their arms industry, but also some going to invest in the Ukrainian defense industry. We had heard previously that Sweden is committing $7.8 million to Ukraine for demining and drone technology. $4 million allocated for demining operations comes as Ukraine faces one of the largest contaminations of explosive remnants in modern history. Then with Norway, I mentioned this last night on the Touchny live stream. Swedish startup Nordic Air Defence has unveiled a low-cost interceptor to combat drones. The Kreuger 100, designed for use on the battlefield and to protect critical infrastructure, is characterised by high speeds of up to 270 kilometers per hour and very good efficiency. Even if we make great progress, it will still be difficult to combat saturation attacks. Lasers will be the answer. In the meantime, if they could deliver some to Ukraine, it would save lives. So that's good, except I think I got confused and was talking about this with regard to a counter battery radar, or a counter drone radar, but actually this is an interceptor setup, and that looks pretty damned cool. So that is a Swedish startup, actually, Nordic Air Defence. So Sweden really looking to help out. Netherlands is funding a major drone project for Ukraine with 500 million euros as part of the 2 billion euro acceleration package for 2025. The support will help Ukraine counter Russian attacks on the front lines, announced Minister Ruben Brekelmans. Fantastic there from the Netherlands. And in fact, to put a bit of more meat on the bone, the project's main directions are to create a zone of destruction to a depth of 10 to 15 kilometers from the line of combat contact, which will complicate the enemy's advance without significant losses. Well, actually, that is it worth talking about this now? Do I have something about this? Yes. So I mentioned this just on my mapping update, but that was talking about this one about the Netherlands here. It was talking about a 10 to 15 kilometer corridor from the line of contact. But actually, Ukraine has just gone from a 20 kilometer FPV truck denial zone to a 40 kilometer mortar tube and rocket artillery denial zone. What is Trent Telenko talking about here? Well, the Ukrainian armed forces have begun using FPV drones with an increased range of up to 40 kilometers along almost the entire front line, according to TASS. So that's the Russians claiming of the Ukrainians here. Now, what this means is that anything within a 40 kilometer zone of the front line, or at least probably 35, let's assume you're not going to have your operators right on a contact line. That means now all of Russian artillery and multiple launch rocket systems will be in range of FPV drones. If that is the case, then my goodness, Russia are in a lot of trouble. Not only is the Russian god of war dead in Ukraine, says Trent Telenko. In other words, artillery is dead. The entire non-GMLRS US military artillery park has just been made obsolete. Okay, let's take the first thing first here. We have seen in the last week phenomenal numbers of pieces of artillery taken out. And I was trying to work out why that might be. It could well be that the artillery is being taken out because now FPV drones are routinely able to take out artillery that's sitting 20 kilometers behind the front line. The range has now been increased of FPV drones such that artillery is routinely able to be targeted by normal FPV drones, as in not your kind of medium range drones. This is potentially a really significant shift here. I don't know if that's why we are suddenly seeing on one day over 100 pieces of artillery taken out. Maybe that was 2 days of that, but some phenomenal numbers. So that's the first thing. And second of all, what Trentelenko's here saying, that apart from Gimlers, which that would be your HIMARS systems, for the Americans, anything else that sits within that 40-kilometer zone has now been made obsolete. In other words, the US need to come up with, or any armed forces, of course, need to come up with an answer to drone warfare. Really, they need to be thinking on their feet, thinking pretty quickly now. Drones have changed everything, and now arguably you've got a 40-kilometer corridor on any front line. That means that you need to have drone protection. There are Russian media reports that 2/3 of Russian casualties are from Ukrainian drone drop munitions and FPVs. Actually, that's 75.5%. So it's bigger than that. It's 3/4. The mission replacement of ballistic indirect fire munitions with indirect fire powered drone munitions is upon us. Right, what else do we have? Here's a German Brem Bürgerpanzer II equipped with a British route opening mine plough trawl designed for clearing mines and obstacles. Just a bit of a Franken deminer here, where we have a German AEV, armoured engineering vehicle, equipped with a British mine plough. That looks so Mad Max, doesn't it? Absolutely incredible sight, that. Right, Forbes is reporting that Russia's just figured out how to jam American and French smart bombs. Ukrainian engineers are working overtime. This is a David Axe piece, so take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt. He's not always the most accurate, but he is very pro-Ukraine. So the idea is that, according to a Russian blogger, they have brought in new electronic warfare equipment. A Ukrainian military blogger, sorry. Sonyashnik has noted in a report they can really interfere with a strike. Blogger further explained the technical impact. The GPS of the bombs can go out. Very technical there. While this represents a concerning development for Ukrainian forces, Forbes war correspondent David Axe reports that Ukraine should be able to adapt by relying on bombs with self-contained guidance systems. The effectiveness of Russian jamming compared to Ukrainian capabilities remains unclear. Ukraine has historically maintained an electronic warfare advantage, quickly deploying sophisticated radio jammers that disrupt Russian communications networks. This development could affect Ukraine's ability to reliably strike Russian targets with precision munitions like the French-made Hammer and American-made small-diameter bomb GBU-39. Recently, Ukrainian Su-27 fighters have been using these weapons against bridges in Russia's Belgorod Oblast, attempting to isolate Russian troops in the border region, where Ukrainian forces have conducted limited incursions. Of course, this is all part of the cyclical nature, the cat and mouse game of such technology, as he mentions. Each measure eventually faces a countermeasure, which then faces its own countermeasure. For precision bombing, satellite jamming is countered by inertial navigation systems, or INS. The future belongs to autonomous INS, declared fighter bomber, the unofficial Telegram channel of the Russian Air Force. In other words, when your GPS gets cut out, there's an inertial guidance system that can kick in. And if that can be an autonomous INS system, then you can find ways around these jamming challenges. Right, moving on. Ukrainian armed forces, actually, it's worth noting that, as I said this morning in my hits and losses video and yesterday, that the Russians appear to be feeling the brunt of quite a lot of Ukrainian guided glide bombs. The Ukrainians have been at least publishing more footage of these bombs hitting targets. I presume that means they're using them more and they're having greater success with them. We know that when JDAMs were given to Ukraine originally, they were able to be jammed somewhat easily and had to go back. Well, you've got the JDAMs launched from the planes, and then you've got the GLSDB launched from multiple launch rocket systems, taking these kind of dumb bombs, adding packs to them so that you can turn them into precision munitions. So either from the air or from the ground, these are able, or were able, to be jammed, it was thought. Part of it was, the Americans came back and said, well, actually, so the manufacturers like Boeing and Saab with the GLSDB saying, yeah, okay, we need to do some work on this, but also you need to be firing them in the right way, and you need to be sort of preparing the area that you're going to be using them in, or not using them in that area, but using this area. So there was some onus on the Ukrainians to use them more cleverly, rather than it's just the fault of the munition. So there were two elements going on there. The Ukrainian armed forces have mastered and are scaling up repairs of the US M2A2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles in Ukraine. In the first 2 months of 2025, 20 Bradleys were restored in Ukraine, compared to 60 over the entirety of 2024. So in just 2 months, they were doing 10 a month, when it was 5 a month in 2024. So they have doubled their capacity to repair these Bradleys in situ, or at least in Ukraine, and that'll be a real help. I presume they're not going to receive any more Bradleys from the Americans, to be perfectly honest. However, it is worth noting, I might bring that in now. Where is it? Yeah, here. It's worth noting that over the past week, US military aid flights to Ukraine have jumped, with 747 freighters delivering supplies from a number of locations: 2 from McGuire Air Force Base, 3 from Joint Base Charleston, 1 from Ramstein, 1 from MacDill, 1 from Biggs Army Airfield. So this is the claim that the Americans are upping their assistance. It could be just the last really of what they have to give to Ukraine. I don't know. It depends how long it takes them to get equipment up to the correct standards for the Ukrainians, because some of the equipment they're giving needs a bit of a tinkering with, a bit of a buff up. Updated tracker of USA Air Force US chartered flights into Rzeszów, which is over the Polish border. The US aid shutdown to Ukraine is clear in the data, but the last week has seen a ramp up in flights. This was where they stopped help, put a pause on help to Ukraine, and then we've seen it jump back up, but it's still not what it was earlier, of course, right at the beginning of 2025, when Biden was still when they were trying to whack a load of equipment into Poland ahead of the inauguration. Right, semi-auto loader, the Bogdana self-propelled howitzer. Now, the cost of this self-propelled howitzer, which is made by the Ukrainians, is 2.8 million euros. Just to give you a little bit of context, the Caesar, the French provided self-propelled howitzer, is about 6.4 million euros. So this is considerably cheaper, somewhere between a half and a third of the price. So production facilities are spread across different locations in Ukraine, and obviously that's part of the way of safeguarding their production, and in the EU as well. The production of each part of the SP self-propelled howitzer is duplicated. That is, it is manufactured in at least 2 different enterprises. Again, that's clever. So you're making all of the components to this. Well, many of the components are made in different places, but there are 2 places that make exactly the same components. So if one gets blown up by the Ukrainians, one other place is making it still. So you can still produce these self-propelled howitzers, unless loads of these places, loads of the manufacturing facilities are hit all at once. But I think that's pretty clever there, and good to see. You've got a apparently capable self-propelled howitzer there being produced for a fraction of the price of the Caesar. Now, it probably won't be as good as a Caesar in terms of the tech. I'm presuming that Ukraine will struggle to get hold of some of that really advanced tech, or it could be that they don't need to get hold of it because they don't need to make like the very best self-propelled howitzers, because that would then ramp up the cost. So it's better to have, you do the maths, if 6.4 million, so 2 Caesar howitzers is 12.8 million, and 12.8, what does 2.8 fit into 12.8? So you're going to get 5 maybe of those for 2 Caesars. So it might not be as good as a Caesar, but we get more of them. And actually, when you're just throwing lead into the air, we'll prefer 5 than 2 better ones. 5 of the SP of the Bogdana. Now, not only are they producing the Bogdana self-propelled howitzer. As I've mentioned, they're also producing this, the howitzer, the towed howitzer version, a 155mm towed howitzer, Bohdana BG. Build is reporting this as well, going to a test site where they have that. So that's fantastic. In fact, I was reading that they basically have more barrels at the moment than they have chassis for this stuff. Is it on this one? No. Is it here? No. I might have to find that. So basically, they're looking for alternative places to get chassis for some, or the no, it's for these towed howitzers, where I think they need more of the undercarriage bits. They've got enough barrels now. I've long thought that the barrels are going to be the hard bit. You need quite a lot of energy, and it's quite a precise process to make these barrels. It's not an easy thing to do. And I was thinking that there would be a bottleneck of barrels, but actually that might not be the case. It might be that actually they've got enough barrels, and that's why they're making these towed howitzers. They just don't have enough of the other stuff. Jigger's Paw here. So I don't know if Irina's in this video, but we do have a report here. Oh, that's old, what's his name? Our 100 FPV drones for Azov project is completed, says Jigger's Paw. Huge shout out to Frontline Kit and his team for assembling. That's Richard Woodruff, that's it. And his team for assembling all FPV drones in a few weeks. Also thanks to someone else, who is this German Timchik, Superpower, to purchase drone parts. The price per drone was down from $350 to just $333, which allowed the team to build not 100 but 105 drones for the same cost. That's brilliant. I mean, I love it when you see there. Is that Arena? No, that's one of Jigger's Paw lot, no doubt. I love seeing just huge numbers of these drones stacked up and thinking, yeah, these are going to go to the front line and do their stuff. It's great to see that. And Jigger's Paw, fantastic. They are appealing to finish their Triad campaign that we contributed to. Really proud to have been part of that. Now, this was a video that someone linked to me. Fascinating stuff. And I do remember something about this maybe a couple of years ago. But listen to this.
This drone looks like it's about to crash, but it's actually charging itself. Designed by Danish students, this smart drone finds power lines using sensors and cameras when its battery runs low. But instead of taking power directly, it uses the magnetic field around the wires to charge wirelessly. This helps it stay in the air longer and complete missions without interruptions. This drone looks like it's about...
Amazing. So what you could do is have a drone that suddenly can give you much greater range due to, well, it doesn't need a larger battery, but being able to be recharged en route. If you know that there's a power line around there somewhere, then you can fly a drone 20 kilometers, get a power line, charge it further up, and then get it another 20 kilometers. That means you don't need as large a battery. It means you can have a larger munition on board, and I don't know if that's something you're going to see on the front lines at all, but certainly an interesting evolution of drone technology there, or indeed battery technology. Better late than never is our last piece here. So Syrskyi has announced that, quote, that's the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, we modernized the combat training course, extended it to 1.5 months, 1.5 months, 6 weeks, and introduced a mandatory adaptation period for newcomers in combat brigades. This has led to a reduction in losses this month. If you remember, I spoke to Kevin Leach. I'm going to probably put a few of my interviews I've done recently back out on the main on the channel, but instead of being a live, a lot of my lives don't get looked at after they've been live, right? And that means that some people are missing out on some really great interviews. So if you've already seen them, just ignore them, obviously. But I'm going to put them out on the main channel and may edit them a little bit or something, but then hopefully more of the audience can get to see those live interviews. Kevin Leach was one where he was saying, look, we were able to compare the trained troops that we had with the next kind of units along that didn't receive the training, and our units who received NATO-style training had far fewer losses than the control group, if you like. And so training does make a difference, right? Obviously. This has led to a reduction in losses this month, says Syrskyi. However, there's still work to be done. We must strive for the highest training standards. Good news there. Okay, that's enough from me. Take care. I'll speak to you soon. I'm probably going to do a live to do my geopolitics today. I need to start putting more time aside at the moment to getting some writing and editing done. I've got a book that's a third in a trilogy of history and exegesis, real geeky stuff that I've been writing since 2020. I broadly finished all my parts, and I had to change co-author because my other co-author got COVID really badly. She's been unable to commit to it. And so Aaron Adair, who I've written another book with, has come on board, and this is a book on the Exodus, and we're looking at a critical historical analysis of the account of the Exodus. So that is a big old book, and as I say, it's a third in the trilogy of that similar type of book. And probably going to be the last book of that sort I'll ever write, because I don't know that my brain can handle that level anymore. But I need to put finishing touches on that, co-write a couple of chapters for it. So I'm going to have to put like an hour a day aside for editing and whatnot, in a way that I've neglected over the last sort of 2 years. So that's going to rejig the way some of my content goes at the moment. But anyway, enough of that. You don't need to know that, but just giving you a heads up anyway. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.